if you're trying to get to FI, to financial independence, you don't want to lose that chicken just to get an egg, right? And that's what happens if they buy, right? You lost $500 a month, you got $25,000, but you can't quit your job on $25,000 in the bank. You can quit your job with 7 houses giving you $500 a month.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Zach Zimmer. Zach's journey from climbing the corporate ladder to achieving a 1%er life, retiring on passive income between 40, is a simple story. Your bio says simple, not easy. I bet you it's not even simple, but I'm looking forward to diving into that. And first, Zach, let me just say thank you for coming on the show, taking out the time to share your story with me and my listeners. I'm very excited to sort of get to hear more.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here and connect with more and more folks to hopefully get the mindset switched from what we're raised and how I was raised of we're going to spend our whole life working for someone else and giving our time, our most important resource, to this life of financial independence and time abundance to, own your life, control your life, like Tim Ferriss talks about in his book and many others do, right? Changing, taking that red pill and changing your way of thinking.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, give people, sort of your background. Tell us a bit of your story so they can kind of understand that, journey that you've been on, and then we'll just dive in from there.
Yeah. So, I came up the normal traditional route of go to school, have a good job, build a career, do, everything that you can for your company to move up. And, and that's what my objective was from high school to going to a good college, getting an engineering, manufacturing management degree to, working, doing whatever I needed to do for that next company. You want me to travel to Mexico and work in Mexico like I did? You want me to work here? Where do you want me to go? And then, as that kind of grew out, it was, okay, what other companies want me to do this? And I remember being on an interview and telling the company, like I had this line, like, no amount of travel will stop me and no amount of work or overtime. And I just remember saying those things because, my life was to the company, right? To what we, what's historically been what we did, right? And I first, I didn't even understand what I was doing when I first started getting into real estate. Bigger Pockets or any of these other, big websites and training things weren't out there. And there wasn't 10,000 or 100,000 videos on YouTube in 2011, 2012, right? Of how to invest in real estate and cap rates and ROI and cash on cash. Like that wasn't out there everywhere. Or at least you didn't even know. You didn't know what you didn't know. You didn't know to go look and Google for that stuff. But I heard at the company I was at that people were buying rentals. That company it had a nice bonus structure, and each March people would get a bonus, and some of these managers, were at the 20-25% bonus level, and on $100,000 salary, right, that was $25,000, and you could certainly go get a 30-year fixed mortgage and get a nice house. And this is in Northeast Ohio, right, Midwest Rust Belt, where properties were very cheap at that time in 2010, 2011. And so I started hearing about this, and I remember I love Excel. My background is data intelligence, continuous improvement. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. And so I love spreadsheets and data and pivot table charts and looking at everything. And so I love to put together the models to see, okay, yeah, this makes sense. Now, I had no idea like this could be a way of life. It was just, man, this is going to put, $300, $400 a month cash flow per house into my pocket. And so I found a duplex that I wanted to go and get. And I looked, and this was so basically I got connected with a realtor that had been working with folks. And I was like, oh, I heard about multifamilies. Like, let's go look at this. It's two residences, right? Two streams of income. And we went and looked at it. And I remember putting the numbers together. And I think I called my dad and then I sent him an email. And I was like, okay, yep, here's what I need. I think maybe it was $30,000 or something. Okay, I need 30,000, or maybe I had four or five I was going to put into it. And then I'll pay you back over 10 years or something. We'll do this type of interest rate. And I remember my dad saying, nope, not going to happen. And, my dad, my stepmom, who knows if they were both on board with saying no. But anyhow, they said no. And I just like, man, he does not get it. Right. Why don't they get this? And so I was like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. And I don't remember exactly when that was. Maybe it was probably like December, January, because I hadn't gotten that bonus yet that company does. I was a manager, so I was expecting a pretty decent bonus. So I kept kind of fiddling around, and I eventually settled on single family and started looking at single families. And that bonus hit, and I got about $20,000. And I found a single family in Akron, Ohio that was I couldn't tell you what it was listed for, but I got it for 40,000 under contract. And this was a nice big colonial, maybe built in the 30s, early 40s, 3 bedroom, one full bath. And back then, the banks were doing paint, were doing carpet, making sure plumbing, electrical, everything's all good to get these things to move, because this is 2011. There's not a lot of real estate investors out there doing this.
Right.
So I get it under contract. I'm working with Huntington. Yep, we're going to do a 30-year fixed loan. And like the next day, a 2006 house pops on the market 2 blocks away from this. So it was a parcel that was it was a big parcel where a house was built, and they split off half of it in 2005 or something. And somebody built a new house there. Well, that house went to foreclosure. And so this house was listed at like 55,000, and it's a 2006 vinyl siding, vinyl windows, 4 bed, 2 full bath, stainless appliances. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, why wouldn't I? Like, hey, Huntington, like, could we do 2 loans? And they're like, yes, you double income, no kids, 2W2s. Yeah, what do you guys want? And so I got that one under contract. And so it was crazy. Like, our first step was buying two. And yes, okay, right. What we've built since then is huge, but that first decision was the biggest, to not just be in the rat race, right? Because we didn't have kids. We were two W2, good income, maybe between the two of us, 120, 130,000. And what do you do when you get a bonus? Oh, that new patio, finish the basement, we go on a vacation, you get the new cars, you get new furniture, you increase your expenses. Either, you're taking things on credit, or you're just going and blowing the cash. But that was our biggest thing when we said no. I told my wife, no, I'm not going to go blow this. I'm going to buy two properties, and with 10% down and all the closing costs, that basically, yeah, I mean, that was enough to cover everything. And so, okay, we're done, right? We spent all the cash we had. We got two properties. Yeah, okay, that's it. We were having our first child. And so in my mind, hey, okay, between these two properties, we're going to bring in maybe $600, $700 a month in cash flow. That's our weekends. Our weekends out, our dinners, drinking, getting a hotel room up in Cleveland, going to a show. Hey, that's going to cover that. And then we're going to sell these in 18 years, and that's going to pay for, at least 2 years of college. Right. So,
Right.
Hey, okay, this was a pretty cool thing. We don't have to save for college. Our weekends are paid for. And that's all my mind understood at that point of what this could be.
Yeah.
So, that was two houses in 2012. And, I couldn't tell you when I found, more content online of bigger pockets where, I know I ended up losing, hundreds, if not 1,000 hours just reading the forums every night, on my computer, on my phone. And then weekends, just I would be consumed with just understanding people's stories, because that's really, I don't know how big it's become today, but back then it wasn't a big education company. It was just a forum.
Right.
It was a
Right.
forum for people to share what they're doing in real estate. Oh, I'm buying this, and this is this return, and this, and this. Oh, and here's how I deal with this tenant. Here's how I deal with this water line. Oh, furnaces. Okay, a furnace should cost this much. So that's where I learned like my foundation through, reading hundreds and thousands of people just commenting back and forth and sharing stories. And so the next thing was when I found a bank. I heard of this community bank that would fund renovations because I didn't I couldn't find a lot more of those turnkeys that were just completely done. And so I was like, okay, I heard this story. I talked to this lender. Yeah, you build up the rehab list. They're going to go get it appraised and they're going to give you 75% of that appraisal at closing. So a good example was a property in Akron. I got under contract for like 44,000. And we said, yep, we're going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, this whole list. I put together a quote with a contractor. And I remember them saying, okay, yeah, this property is going to be worth 90,000. I was like, whoa. So at closing, they end up giving me like $14,000 and the rehab was only going to be 8. So I'm like, I just pocketed like $5,000 or $6,000. I own the house. It's going to cash flow $400 or $500 a month. Whoa. Like, this really doesn't make sense. Like, you paid me to buy this house and it's going to cash flow. So I was like, wow, okay, this is really something here. Like, this can really become something. And so I started doing that with a community bank that was just, everybody was fairly aggressive and interested in real estate in the local community banks, right? These banks that have 3 to 8 branches versus like a Wells Fargo, Chase. They're not doing that. But your
Right.
your S&T, Wells, Wayne Savings, Apple Creek, SSB, like all these kind of community banks in my area. That's what they like to do, and that one was being more aggressive than anybody. And these were interest rates, right, at 4%, 4.5%, like. So I did probably about, through 2013, maybe I did 4 or 5 like that. And at this time, I'm still struggling on realtors and contractors. So, I mean, they're kind of getting me deals, doing a house or two and struggling with a contractor. And then, basically I had a contractor, started to get lied to, had stuff broken and stolen. And so it was probably like 2014 when I found like 2 great realtors through just going to houses, calling list agents, and those 2 people, I ended up, doing the next 6 years worth of buying 70 plus houses. And one of those agents linked me up to the contractor that then became arguably the biggest reason that I got to where I'm at today. Is just one extremely trustworthy, just really legit, honest, great contractor that I did 60, 70 rehabs with. Because those 2 things, particularly, both your agent who's finding you deals, if you're talking about on market acquisition, and your contractor, like if you're struggling with those, like you can lose interest, right? If you're just constantly, I'm not finding any deals, my contractors are horrible, right? Then you can just, oh, this isn't for me, right? This is not going to work. But once I had that system humming along, and that's part of my training from W2 World on systems, empowerment, building the framework, building the roof of leadership, because I got out of their way. I just empowered them. I didn't need to go look at houses, right? Me spending my time to go look at houses is what I said was NVA, non-value added. When you do a value stream map exercise, right? The realtor's the one that has to let you in. The contractor is the one that's going to tell you what needs to be fixed and what the price is.
Yeah.
Hey, I need you 2 to go see this house today. and that's his work, right? I'm trying to keep him with a big, queue of work in front of him. And so, because I was doing a lot of traveling, at that time, I think I probably was at, I probably had 7 plants around the country where I had engineers at, and I'm responsible for processes and equipment and building new plants. So I'm traveling while I'm empowering this team and, just maybe checking in, stopping in, or, when the property is all done, yep, I'm handling, showing it and putting in the tenants. Like I never got out of that because of my control nature, wanting to know who's in there. And I also, right from the beginning, did not do a normal tenancy. I did rent with purchase option to get a different mentality, right?
Yeah.
It's someone who now, oh, I'm going to take care of these things. Number one, because this is going to be my house someday. Number two, I'm contractually obligated. But, it just gets me that owner occupant mindset. And I completely do not do it predatory. That's something that's given rent to own a challenge, I think over the years because of some of these companies that come in, throw people in for $5,000, give them 12 months. And if they're looking at their credit score, they would know whether or not that person's going to make it. And they're probably moving
Right.
somebody in with a 500 credit score. And 12 months later, they're not going to go buy that house.
Yeah.
So, I don't care really about your credit score because I give you forever is our time frame. You have a 4 year that spells out everything. And if at the end of that 4 year you need more time or you just want more time, you don't know that you want to own here, I'll give you another one. And at any time you can walk away, at any time you can buy the property, or we'll write you another one and we'll carry over your deposit and your credits. And so that was another key piece that allowed me to have my time to focus on my career, which I was still doing at that time. I'm still trying to get a great W-2 because that's how we lived. We did not touch the rental and flipping snowball. And that's one of the other big things that I love to tell people because I'll meet people all the time. Oh, I just wholesaled a house. I just flipped a house. Oh, I made 20 grand. I'm going to quit my job. Oh my goodness, it's a horrible decision.
Yeah.
You're not going to get
Yeah.
loans. And now you're going to be living off what you're trying to build. You're trying to build a
Yeah.
house of chickens and you're going to be living off the eggs instead of, reinvesting.
Yeah.
So, all that stuff, it's kind of combining to, give me that red pill. I like to refer to Keanu Reeves, right? The red pill, you can change your mind and see this matrix, or you take the blue pill and you go right back to your life. And, it's through those combination of events that just continually kept motivating me, along with some, brash, aggressive motivation from Grant Cardone, who, his books, 10X and Boba, love him or hate him. If you want some motivation in your life, I think those two books are key to really get you to go out there and keep your foot down and don't stop.
Yeah. It's a great story. And I think that some of the really key takeaways here for people to understand, you mentioned this, that, in that beginning, that the first house, which turned out to be two first houses, you just, sort of made that move at a time when it was probably more comfortable to take risks, right? You had, you and your wife had two good jobs. You didn't have to, you didn't have kids to take care of. And so I think it's not that you can't take risks with those things, but it's still, when you're getting going, that's a good time to take risks like that, or to even, in recognizing, like, sure, it's a risk, I guess, on paper, but at the end of the day, like, if the numbers work, which they did, you said you're that, kind of systems and spreadsheet guy, that you understood what was going on, and the numbers work. It's like, well, so why not? Like, why wouldn't you do that? And I think so many people look for ways to say, what if it goes wrong? But realistically, looking at it from what if this works? And guess what? Like, lots of people have done, like, and listen to your story and see it has worked for people. And so, knowing that it does, it can give you some comfort to moving forward. Zach, you walked through like obviously a long span of time there, and it's a great story. I think that the beginning piece, as I mentioned, is a really good point. I think the other thing you said about sort of keeping your job, sometimes people are a little too maybe excited to get out of that W-2 job, but it really does provide a lot for you. I know people will argue that the W-2 job isn't as safe as you think it is, and it's probably not. It's if it's your only thing, but if you're coupling it with, okay, I'm building a real estate empire on the side, or whatever, some sort of investment type of portfolio, well, now you have that while you're putting those other pieces in place, so that if ever something goes wrong with that job, you lose the job, you've already taken the steps to do it. So it's something that I think is a great piece. You can get benefits from that job. You get paid, you get a regular paycheck, you get your bonuses like you talked about. There's a lot of reasons to hang on to it as long as you can. Are you still working in a W-2 job, or have you gone completely real estate?
Yep. So it's a good point. So let's talk about that leg under your table, as Tim Shiner puts it. When you have a job, you have one leg under your table. And twice in my career, that one leg has been swept away, cut out in 1 minute. Right? It happened in 2013 when we had 2 rentals, and we had just built a house. We just had that baby, and bam, my 6-figure job gone. We just lost 60% of our income. And this is the guy who's been bleeding for my companies, right? I'm moving up. And I took that jump in 2013 to a new company owned in private equity. And I was only there for like 5-6 months. And when private equity misses a quarter of earnings, they take drastic, right? They're not a family business thinking about the long term.
Right.
They missed their quarter earnings. And I was in this horizontal function of continuous improvement, not running any business unit. So really, they look at those horizontal functions, learning and development, training, continuous improvement. Those are the first ones to go. And so, again, in 2013, we didn't understand what real estate could be, but I understood the pain that we felt in that experience. I mean, we were both in tears as I was traveling for the company when they didn't know I was traveling for them to go speak at one of their plants. And that day was, oh, your position's just been eliminated. You got to come back. And so that was another burning platform that helped combine with everything. And then in 2019, as my passive income was probably about 4 times what I made as a director of continuous improvement, very similar thing. I was working in healthcare, a director of continuous improvement, horizontal function. They had a bad earnings miss, and cut my role. And I remember getting the call, and I was like, oh man, I got to go get a cell phone. I got to get health insurance. I got to get my own laptop. I got to do some things here, because I knew that was it. Like, I wasn't going to go back into cutthroat, stressful manufacturing. I worked that last year and a half, 2 years in healthcare, which was, it was fun for me because it was different than manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And, it was just much, I won't say easier, but it was a lot easier working in continuous improvement in healthcare because of how messed up the healthcare space was versus manufacturing and production. So, but yeah, that ended it in 2019. And that's when I said, okay, I wanted to hold my job till I turned 40, which was going to be 8 months later. But no, I resigned or decided to not apply for anything, and actually went on unemployment, which is a fun little thing because I had no earned income. Passive income, rental income, that's all unearned passive income. So I was able to go on unemployment for about 18 months because of COVID. So I'm on unemployment because I was let go. And why wouldn't I take it? I've paid into it. My employers have paid into it. So I'm on unemployment. It ends. And then like a month later, the country shuts down and they extend all the unemployment. So yeah, I collected that for good, like maybe it was 14 months or something. But I was like, yeah, I follow the code, I follow the tax code, I follow everything, and it's how they look at unearned passive income versus earned income, and that's it. I've never had any interest in certainly going back to give up my time, the most important resource we have. But that was also a turning point in 2019 when I felt I had enough direct owned real estate in Ohio, as I had about 60 rentals, and I had some other loans and things here in commercial buildings, like commercial liens and promissory notes. And private equity and syndications were sexy. They were hot in 2019. There was lots of things saying high 20s and low 30% returns in 24 to 36 months. And so that was where I really pivoted into what you could say 100% passive, right? Never going to get a phone call, not going to be dealing with tenants behind, but becoming a limited partner. And I went into probably 25 or more syndications over the next 3 years, across, I wanted to diversify geographically around the country as well as in different asset classes. So hospitality, self storage, triple net commercial, apartments, oil and gas, ATM machines. I wanted a good broad diversification, and it started looking really nice as, one of them sold at a 58% IRR in like 14 months. And I was like, man, do you know what this portfolio is going to become?
Jackpot.
If,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, man, I got, $2.5, $3 million in syndications now. Man, this stuff's just going to keep multiplying. Well, that was about the peak of good news from my private equity side. It has been, particularly like the last 12 months, capital calls, fraud, Ponzi schemes, bad business. And it's still coming in right now. There's some things that have just went down in the last 3, 4 days here that now legal is getting involved in. It is really a disaster. But like my buddy tells me, he's a big Tony Robbins guy,
Yeah.
and I was lamenting about 7 figures and disappearing money, and he threw his arm and he said, Zach, how many people have the opportunity to lose $1 million in private equity and still be out here golfing every other
Right.
day and has a
Right.
place in
Yeah.
Florida? And I said, you know what? Perspective, Joe. Like, thanks for
Yeah.
grounding me. Um, you know, Fortunately, I did a lot of smart investing before I just got loose and just trusted people. And, when I presented at RubeCon, I put a slide on this. Well, what happened? Well, like they said in Seinfeld, Jerry says people are the worst, and it's like, well, I just trusted people. I trusted what all these different syndicators, sponsors, GPs were telling me, and I was drawn, to my fault. I was drawn to high returns.
Right.
When I would find some of this stuff that people have been investing in for 15 years, and I would be like, oh, 10 to 12%. Like, no, look at this company. Look at the RIN saying high 20s, and look at Freedom saying 30%, and look at the ATM machine funds paying 18. Like, all those things attracted me, and yeah, and they knew what they were attracting, and so it's a big ugly mess out there in this private world.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, we can dive in on that some more too. But before that, so there's, I, I think you've got like experiences in a lot of different spaces within real estate, which is really cool perspective to pick from. And you did a lot in the single family side. I wanted to actually talk about that strategy of doing rent to own, because I don't think a lot of people do that. I do think it's very smart, and I was hoping you could maybe just kind of break down how you structure
Yeah.
that. And I think
Yep.
it's, you know people, the market was different when you started, right? 2010, 2011, that was like a great time to get into real estate. It's a little different right now. However, like you can have success in any market just using the, kind of you just have to pivot, use the right strategies or what. But just talk a little bit about that, because you were doing that right from the beginning. Do you continue to you use that rent to own strategy?
So yes, I do all my single families in rent to own. I have owned multis in the past that obviously, you can't, they're just transient
Right.
tenant.
Yeah.
But we sold all of those in a big package here early this year to, I call them crazy California buyers, but they just have different return thresholds that they're after, or different reasoning why they're chasing such low cash on cash
Yeah.
to buy them from us. But yeah, I mean, what I tell about the pro and con of doing rent to own, rent with purchase option. So a pro is passivity. You're gonna have less calls and less issues to deal with. You're gonna have hopefully a property that's taken care of better. That's not always the case, and that one is going to be up in the air because I have friends that own hundreds of rentals, and most of their turns go pretty good because these people knew they were going to be handing this house back to them at some point in time. And so they took care of it. In a lot of my cases, right, they never think they're going to be handing this house back.
Sure.
And for some reason, their upbringing, their background is just not to take care and just to be filthy. And so, I just got a turnover back beginning of this month. They had been in this house for 4 years, and she sent me a text on the last day of the month that she was out. There was a situation that occurred and she had to leave the house and she won't be coming back. And when I got over there, oh, the house was horrible. I mean, horrible. And fully loaded with all sorts of stuff. But I mean, food, the kitchen was disgusting. The house was just disgusting. And so I feel like in rent to own, yes, you're not going to get calls because they're responsible when they know that. But they may not be taking care of the house as well, even though that's the objective. And then you are definitely not going to have as good and amiable of turnovers because this wasn't meant to be a turnover, right? So something happened that affected their life negatively. And that's why they're either leaving by communicating to you or they're just leaving. They're just bailing on and I don't take big deposits. So that's another thing. I don't take big deposits, and maybe I should so that they feel more obligation to have a good, clean exit. But in my area, when you're talking about homes that are, they're worth 120. But since I've been doing this, these are homes that I'm all in for 40. I mean, you can't really take 5,000. There's not enough people that have $5,000 to put down. So,
Right.
I take 2,500 down. So another con is if you're trying to get to FI, to financial independence, you don't want to lose that chicken just to get an egg.
Right.
And that's what happens if they buy, right? You lost $500 a month. You got 25,000, but you can't quit your job on $25,000 in the bank. You can quit your job with 7 houses giving you $500 a month.
Yeah.
So that's what, my best friend that I've been helping for a long, long time. He was slow to start and he's too conservative in where he'll buy, but he followed my footsteps in rent to own, but he also screened much harder than me and would wait and leave properties vacant until he found what he thought was just a super, super, super tenant. Well, guess what happens? Those people buy. They
Right.
buy quicker. And so he lost, he sold 2 houses like within his first year. And he's like, I can't do that anymore. I'm like, no, especially if you're going to be as stringent and reject tons of people and wait for a 650 credit score and a TransUnion A+ review on their application, then they're probably going to buy it pretty soon. And so he just does normal rentals now. So, in my situation where I went up to 60, I sold like 20, and that's what funded most of the private equity. Funded a ton of those syndications. And I stopped my flipping business. So that kicked back a lot of capital. But so I went down to 40, and now with all the challenges and losses I've had in the private space, I just started buying back, and so I'm back to 47. Tomorrow we'll make it 47. I close on another one tomorrow. But at this point, we live, our expenses have been going up, but I mean, we're living below our means to where, okay, if a property sells, I'm still able to go buy, and it's not the end of the world because we're already at FI. And so, it's one of those things, if you're trying to grow to FI, it's risky to do rent to own.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly the pros and cons of rent to own versus just, strict rental versus flip. I mean, what I think is interesting is kind of the ability of mixing those and being able, I'm sorry you've had such negative experiences with your syndication investments, and I unfortunately think a lot of people have recently. There was some maybe overblown enthusiasm that has not turned out, and I mean, anyway, we can get into that or not, but the reality is just finding a strategy that you're comfortable with, right? You can be in real estate in almost an infinite number of ways in finding what's comfortable for you. And it sounds like, you've got the number, whatever that financial independence number is, and you can balance that if you're strictly going with these rent to own. But I would imagine, like, if you've got one that someone purchases, and you take that capital, you can 1031 exchange it, or sort of roll it into another one to keep that passive income flowing in a way.
Yep.
It's probably impacted by interest rates, and if you had a low interest rate and then you sell and now you have to buy something at a higher interest rate, like there's a bunch of factors that go into it. But you've put the work in over a long period of time that you're in a good position to kind of do whatever you want to make it, structure it in the way that you want.
Mm-hmm. It's a good way to put it. And I don't have to worry about 1031s for probably ever because of how much passive loss accrual I have sitting in a big snowball from all these bad investments.
Unfortunately.
So, and that's one thing I joke with people. I started to think about this as these horrible things kept happening is, hey, you can not pay taxes by being an astute investor or being a stupid investor. So, if you mix both, then you got plenty of good losses as well as bad losses to not be paying taxes for a long time.
You said you diversified across markets and across different, asset classes. Was anything? I mean, do you feel like you have things that have performed okay and things that haven't? Is there, or have you had sort of negative experiences across asset classes? Like how do you feel? Just
So we'll talk. Yeah, let's start like oil and gas. I was warned about oil and gas. Just so many unscrupulous characters and so many bad business plans, and they can sell them because of you getting 100% active loss when you're a partner in oil and gas. I went into two oil and gas opportunities. One was a absolute Ponzi scheme that the SEC has locked down. The good news is they were tipped off very early, which they said never happens. Normally, you don't find out it's a Ponzi scheme until they run out of money.
Right.
This one was locked down because they were making claims that somebody who was an investor could actually go validate, and they went to check these claims and they're like, no, and they got the SEC. And so they do have 60 million that they've locked down. So maybe I'm going to get, I don't know. I mean, I think the word was 120 million in outstanding debts, but I was like the last investor into this thing. Like they watched my money come in and get sent out and then like So I don't know if I'll get 50 cents on the dollar. I don't know. So there's that one. And then another one I went into with an operator that, yeah, I mean, I kind of did some due diligence. I mean, talked to some folks. I mean, as much due diligence as you can do. And they've just been, they start the fund and then they just dilute it. They merge it with another one and dilute it and throw more funds in and this more wells and this and that. And it's just completely off projections and nothing's happening. And then I'm finding out they've been doing this for a long time. And so the oil and gas were bad. My apartments in Florida and Texas, habitational insurance premiums because of the ice storm in Texas and the hurricanes in Florida. So they had to do a small capital call because of that. And so that, no, you can't, nothing you can do about that. There's no hindsight in that. The hindsight in the bigger 18% capital call that they just did here a couple months ago was, okay, they were apartment flippers. They were getting into these, going to turn them around and get out in 24 to 36 months. Mm-hmm. Well, they had construction delays and turn delays. And then Florida, there's some type of notification that got instituted in Florida or something. Like you have to clear the whole floor before you can start, or just a whole bunch of things. Oh, wow. So that delayed doing anything. And then now interest caps are expiring. So we got a email, maybe this was back in like March. And my email capital call was like $80,000. And it's like, you got to send this $80,000 by the end of the month. And that was like an 18% capital call, or else you're going to be materially diluted to somewhere around 35%. So it's not as simple as a direct dilution of, oh, well, why would I throw, can I just lose 18%? Like, I'm not going to throw you 18% capital call if you'll just dilute me 18%. That's fine. No, it's going to be material. So, because they do have to go get hard money, maybe they're going to self-fund it with their own money and just take the extra percentage from you. But that was a tough one on the apartment side. My apartments in the Midwest have been fine. Those are with DeRosa Group in the Carolinas and like Kentucky. So those ones have been fine. My hospitality stuff is just a great operator. Those ones have been fine. My self-storage have not gone well at all. I've found out here in the last week. They went through delays on the permitting and zoning and all this because he went too fast, too many sites in too many states at the same time. And by the time he got everything approved, the financing's gone, right? The bank debt that was going with the investor funds to build these self-storage communities is gone, and the numbers don't make sense now. And so, here we are with a lot of expenses, and I'm sure management fees and everything have been sucked out of there. And, I'm sure the dirt land that we own is probably, worth 50%, 40% of what all the investors, funds are that are into these. Yeah, I mean, some triple net commercial ones have seemed to have been going well. And my stuff and like vacation stuff, that one seems like so I have a investment in St. Croix on Chennai Bay, it's like 50 bungalow houses. Yeah. And I heard that is under contract now. And so it sounds like that could be around like a 2 to 2.5 equity multiple. So, a little over double our money in, maybe an 18-month hold. And we got to stay there for free. So, I like that one. So it hasn't all been, and then the ATM machine fund that's possibly crashing hard now that people are getting lawyers and legal folks involved. But yeah, I mean, if I remember all sorts of times through my building of all this, I don't know why the thought would come into my head, like, oh, would I go back a year ago and start over? Like, would I start this year over again? do something different. And I remember like, no, like, dude, I work, I kept my W-2. I had all my direct reports, wife and toddler and an infant, and I still grew my rental portfolio 15 houses this year. And we flipped 2 or 3 to make an extra 150,000 to throw into burring of rentals. So I always answer that question in my mind, like, nope, I would never want to go back and do this year again. It was a lot of work. Would I go back to COVID? Absolutely. I would go back and never throw a dollar, and I would have multiple 7 figures sitting in my Chase account now, or I would own 100 rentals, and just not do these things again because, or do it differently. Somebody asked me, like, well, how would there are 2 groups, Private Investor Club and the 506B group, both online. Those are just groups of passive investors, well seasoned passive investors, professional investors, that control those forums, and they bring in sponsors that they audit and they beat up and question and look at everything. And, then they talk about it in the group and they rank their top sponsors, and then they negotiate better terms for, a group that's going to bring millions. You're not going to have to work on. And I found those groups late in my private equity journey. So, missed out on, and honestly, when I found them, I hadn't had my losses yet. So I still just kind of looked at what they were recommending as, that's too conservative, 12 to 13, 14%. No, this stuff I'm going after is getting high 20s.
Yeah.
So it's been a bad, rough lesson that I would love to go back 2 years ago and not do a lot of, the large majority of these, and just sink them into, like if I can find more partnerships like those apartment units that we flipped to the Cali buyers, or just keep building up in a big single family portfolio. And, then, do I want to have 100 I have to manage? No. But, if I have to work a couple more years, and if I had all that money back to take this thing to 100, and then, go find somebody out here, one of my tenants that's good at, property repairs and stuff. Hey, I'm going to pay you $50,000 a year. Your rent's free, and boom, you're responsible for this portfolio.
Yeah.
Something like that, or hand it to a legit property manager. It's just, I don't want to pay 8%, 10% when there's not going to be a lot of repairs, right? Because they're rent to own. So it's not a normal property manager. It's not worth that. For all they have to do is just look and see if the ACHs came in.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate experiences, and I think it speaks to the importance of the sponsor and the like, I guess, vetting them and just like having as much of an understanding as you can about whether it's asset class or more importantly that sponsor, and are they. I think there's when the real estate market shifts, there's challenges in every single asset class usually. The thing is how are people handling it, and and it sounds like you got stuck in some where people were not forthcoming, not, if they're Ponzi schemes. I mean, obviously that stuff's just straight up illegal. So it's unfortunate that experience. Hopefully some of these still work out for you, and we get some market recovery and things turn back around. I want to switch gears, Zach. I want to get to ask you the questions I ask every guest. The first one is based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. So I always like to ask everybody, what is your why? What's your sort of driving force? You've reached financial independence. You're successful. Kind of what keeps you going with all this?
So my why originally started with time, right? I want my time back. That's why I built. Got to financial independence. When I got there, the why was gone. And it was kind of the combination of 2 things, right? COVID happened right after that. So I went from having, direct reports, being in a company, interfacing with departments and people all day, growing a big rental business, dealing with contractors and agents and just lots of people. And then I don't have the job and I stopped buying rentals. Right now, I'm just wiring money to syndicators. And then COVID hits. So I switched to become this introvert. Like, I mean, I didn't watch TV during the day. Like, I just putzed around in my office and okay, I golf and I've got a group of investor friends, but like, yeah, I joke about that. I found the end of Netflix. Like, it's sitting in my theater, watching TV all night, till midnight, 1 a.m, going to bed, getting up whenever. I lost that why, right? I have my time now and I just wasted it. Quote, could say wasted or enjoyed my life, travel and trips and kids and family and friends. And it wasn't until I started getting back out of my shell and going to some conferences and connecting with some of these folks, and then went to a mastermind where we did an exercise from Tony Robbins called the life wheel, the wheel of life. It's got like these 8 areas, and you rate yourself from a 0 to 10 as you go around this wheel. And a lot of them I focus on, right? Bible in a Year podcast, right? My faith, I hone that in a little bit. My fitness and nutrition's been honed in for a long time. All right, the daily dad, I'm doing these things for my family and marriage. Okay, wealth building. Yep, I'm still investing in things. Okay, legacy, contribution. Oh, yeah. I used to develop my direct reports and give raises and promotions and assign projects. And I used to, I was partnering with people. I was trying to develop people through partnerships, and most of those did not go well. People tried to go too fast. They didn't want to take 6 years to get to FI. They wanted to do it in 2.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't listen. They want to go faster, and they made mistakes with my money too. But so I'm like, yeah. And so I'm sitting there with this group, and there were a couple like real estate doer influencers there. And they're like, yeah, Zach, why aren't you building a bigger life? Why aren't you podcasting? Why aren't you coaching? Why aren't you teaching? And I was like, oh, I'm scared, like, about time. Am I going to lose my time? Like, I don't want to take a call. Like, oh, I'm in Disney with my family, and I'm getting a call because a student has a deal that's fallen through, and they need,
Yeah.
I don't want to get stuck in those situations where I feel like I have to do these things. Like, no, it's nothing like that at all. There's different levels in coaching and teaching and training. You do a podcast and just get out there and try to create a network. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. Like, I don't know how to do this. And so it ended up, my friend Dustin Heiner from Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference and Master Passive Income, he's the one that said, okay, well, come speak at my conference. And I was, whoa, like, he texted me that. And I remember looking at my phone and I was like, oh, I'm going to be in Florida the week before. I'm going to be in Costa Rica the week after. Like, no, I can't. I'm not going to go speak at your conference. And then it hit me like one of those just, I don't know, light bulbs or whatever, smack in the face. Like, Zach, you're never going to change if you're just going to find all these reasons to say no. Get off, put on your big boy pants, go prepare, prepare your story and go teach it. And so that's what kind of set me off on this latest why of just trying to build a bigger life, trying to connect with more folks, trying to create partnerships. Who can I help and partner with that I can get that sense of gratification through development that I used to get when I had, direct reports, when I had partnerships that I was providing capital and mentorship. How can I come up with more opportunities like that around the country? How can I teach folks this FI way of life, the way of thinking, the ways of investing? And so that's what I got the website and the podcast and helping Dustin with different courses, more advanced investor courses, as he likes to call them, and coaching and just, seeing where this could go. Right. It's a hobby to see, but like, can I create this bigger life that gets real gratification. Because I'm buying a house tomorrow, it's not going to do anything for me. Like, it's not gratifying. It's more, I just don't want to have the opportunity to throw it in something dumb. So I'm just throwing my cash now into houses and letting it sit
Yeah.
there so I don't do another dumb syndication. But no, am I going to be 1% happier tomorrow with 47 instead of 46? No. But like, if I could connect with somebody through my podcast, teach them, they can get to FI and I can partner with them, or I can see like, oh man, their life has changed. They now get to go to all their kids' soccer games, and they now get to take more vacations with their wife. Like, and see that gratitude and that experience for someone else.
Yeah. No, I think the seeing growth in others, being a part of growth in others is so gratifying. And sometimes you get to that point in areas in your life where you're like, oh, I've kind of done all I can do here. Like, maybe not, but you're not going to see as much. The growth happens at a slower rate, I guess, if you will, than someone kind of in those beginning stages. So it really is great to be a part of that. When people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what would be the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, so I do have a freebie, kind of, if they text TPL for The Passive Life, which is kind of my brand, The Passive Life. Text TPL to 33777. That's TPL to 33777. I'll give them my top 5 strategies to 7-figure passive income. So we'll talk about some of the things and how I went into them, and we'll talk about a couple others that we didn't. But then my website is realzachzimmer.com. Somebody has zachzimmer.com, so I had to take realzachzimmer.com. So that's REAL, realzachzimmer.com. And that's where you can connect with me through Facebook or email. And you can, just the podcast is linked there, everything that way.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes for people. Zach, I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing everything that you did. I think your perspective is unique in that you've kind of been involved in real estate in a lot of different ways, active, passive, good and bad, kind of all of that. So I appreciate you sharing everything and being here today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, it was fun. Hopefully some benefits out there for your listeners, and enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, I'm sure. Folks listening, I know you're going to love this episode. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests like Zach, and make sure you connect with him. He's got a lot of knowledge to share, and thank you all for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?